This month on Focus Black Oklahoma, join us as we discuss education legislation and how funding allocation will affect Tulsa.
Explore the Texas community working to protect their land from encroachment by a locally based oil giant.
Hear the latest update to our story from March about the ongoing efforts to reform the Oklahoma County Jail.
Listen to the case for Oklahoma to have its own version of the Crown Act.
Discover the upcoming Tulsa Jazz Festival with John Taylor of Taylor Entertainment Group.
Reflect on the women MCs that laid the foundation for today's women rap stars.
And celebrate mothers with a childhood memory from Michelle Cullum. All of this and more on Focus Black Oklahoma.
Focus Black Oklahoma is sponsored by the Black Church Traditions and African American Faith Life program at Phillips Seminary, offering a master's degree in social justice online and in person. Learn more at wherefaithleads.com.
This is Focus Black Oklahoma. I'm Kuma Roberts.
And I'm Jacob Littlebear.
Education funding disparities continue to adversely affect students in underserved communities who suffer from limited opportunities for success. Anthony Cherry talks with education leaders in Tulsa who are committed to advocating for more equitable funding allocations from the legislature. Special thanks to an aspiring journalist named Harley Smith for her contributions to this story.
Education policy has always been an intense political discussion in Oklahoma. Ongoing debates about funding, teacher salaries, and interpretations of the concept of the separation of church and state drive voters to the polls and to their email accounts to reach out to their representatives. This legislative session is no exception. Lawmakers are currently crafting legislation that will impact the future of education in the state indefinitely. From new laws to changes in funding, there's a lot to stay up to date on before the current legislative session ends on May 26, 2023.
I think about Oklahoma families and I think about how incredibly busy they are. They're living their lives, they're raising their children, they're taking care of their homes, and they are getting done what they need to get done professionally. And that's a lot. And they have a tremendous amount of pressure on them with all of those demands. And so I know it's hard, but I think the main thing I would want Oklahoma families to do is to please try to pay attention.
That was Dr. Deborah Gist, the superintendent of Tulsa Public Schools. She has served as the lead administrator of TPS since July 1st, 2015. She expresses avenues for stakeholders to remain knowledgeable and to ensure that their voices are heard during this year's legislative session. Changes and amendments are happening constantly.
And one of the best ways to pay attention is really to find a trusted source that can send you alerts. So whether it's the Parent-Teacher Association, the Oklahoma PTA, or the Oklahoma PLAC, the Parent Legislative Action Committee, or, trusted sources, or to find a trusted source who will send you information, push it out to you.
One of the misconceptions of this session is that the conservative lawmakers are trying to cut spending on education.
Well, it's actually an increase in funding. It's just an inequitable increase of funding. So for Tulsa Public Schools, and I don't know that I'm going to remember these exactly right, but for Tulsa Public Schools, we're capped at $2 million. So if the Senate passed a different bill, so, we don't know how all this is going to end up, but in the House bill, we're grateful that they acknowledge that there needs to be additional funding in public education. And it had a number of different things in it, but it included this $300 million for distribution to schools. So that was great. But because of that cap, Tulsa would receive $2 million, which if it had been done on a per pupil basis or done through the formula, I believe it was closer to $14 million.
A handful of education funding bills are currently being debated in the Oklahoma House and Senate.
One example I would give is that House Bill 2775 has a tie and is contingent upon the creation of the tax credit system that's a part of House Bill 1935, 1935. And so that is the tax credit for private school education.
House Bill 2775 includes a $500 million increase for funding for public schools and a $2,500 minimum teacher raise, amongst other things. House Bill 1935 is a voucher bill that is being labeled as a tax credit by conservative lawmakers. It allows families to receive a $5,000 voucher to send each child to a private school of the family's choice. Details of these bills continue to evolve by the moment.
2775 creates the illusion of additional aid. But in truth, like Tulsa, we're the state's largest district, Tulsa Public Schools. We have 34,000 students. They'd get the same portion of the additional $300 million as Ponca City Public Schools, which serves 4,000 students. Same money, we have 30,000 more students.
That was Shauna Mott-Wright, the president of Tulsa Classroom Teachers Association. She was elected to represent organized teachers in the Tulsa Public Schools district.
A raise is worth nothing if you're defunding public education. And so being a teacher, I'm going to do a really quick lesson. In 2018, we had a walkout, and people talk about for the teacher's raise. Well, that's poppycock because we got a raise before the walkout. We walked out for funding for our children.
Mott-Wright acknowledges improvements since the walkout, but expresses her current concerns about defunding public education.
That doesn't mean everything in there is awful. I'm a teacher. You give credit where credit's due and then push you to do better because I know you're capable of more, right? So there are lots of good things in Senator Pugh's bill and lots of good things from the House version. When you ask individual legislators, what about your schools? Well, my schools are great. You'll get that every time. So I have gone around and asked every individual legislator, and I get that same sort of response, if not the exact words. So if every single one of your schools are great, then why are you saying schools aren't great? It doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean we can't get better. Shoot, it doesn't mean I don't get mad sometimes at things I see. I mean, if we've met, you already know that about me. But the schools are great. They're doing great, but you have to be in them, not standing on the outside criticizing whatever or working with 5 pieces of a 1,000-piece puzzle and then acting like you know what's what. You don't know.
Mott-Wright goes on to share her thoughts on House Bill 1935 and private school vouchers.
If you want to send your kid to private school, there's not a thing wrong with that. If you want to send them to a private religious school, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you start to take monies and funds that are set aside for public schools or public entities to non-public entities, there is a lot wrong with that. And so Oklahoma kids, Oklahoma students, over 95% of them attend public schools. So I also don't understand where this ethereal, not real need is to help 5% as opposed to the 95%.
Dr. Gist also shares her stance on the education vouchers proposed in House Bill 1935.
And I think that there's so many things about that I think are problematic, including the fact that it doesn't acknowledge need, family need. So for so many reasons could be seen as just a tax benefit for those who don't necessarily need a tax benefit at the expense of our public school system, in which most families have tremendous need. And in Tulsa Public Schools, it's more than 80% of our families are financially or economically disadvantaged. And so the need is definitely there.
Education accountability refers to the system and processes in place to ensure that educational institutions and its educators are held responsible for the quality and effectiveness of education provided to students. It involves establishing standards, measuring performance, and implementing strategies to improve educational outcomes. Accountability issues with these bills seem to concern Dr. Gist.
There's something else that, as a taxpayer, that I think is hugely problematic about this conversation that doesn't get elevated enough, and that is the wildly different accountability systems that are in place. So public education systems are the most accountable of, I would argue, any public system. And we should be accountable. I mean, I believe that being a good steward of taxpayer dollars is one of my most important responsibilities, along with obviously the education of our children. And so you need to do those two things. And so we're accountable for student performance. We have annual audits. We have transparency requirements around when we can meet and how we meet and the way in which we communicate. We have publicly elected school boards. We have curriculum that's based on the standards that are part of the Oklahoma education system. We follow the laws. We serve all children, regardless of their abilities or their economic background or whatnot. And that's all important.
GIST expands on the different expectations of accountability for public versus private schools.
I don't think the public realizes how much we spend on that accountability that is beyond the kind of accountability that I think is really important, like financial and academic accountability. But anyway, the point that I was really making is about the difference. And so you have that kind of like stranglehold accountability. And then on the opposite side with this tax credit, there's none. There's no accountability for how the funding is used. There's no, like the school that the tax credit is for, they don't have to accept all the students. They're not subject to annual audits or particular curriculum or whatnot. And so I think that, that's something that is important for us to talk about.
The economic stability of the state and its individual inhabitants must be part of the discussion, according to Tulsa's lead educator.
Well, let's then talk about your pocketbook, because the other thing that people have to recognize is that these investments in education benefit all of us for so many reasons. The ability for our economy to thrive, the ability for each of these individual young people to grow up and be successful and to live a quality life where they can take care of their family and so forth, that benefits everyone.
Dr. Gist remains optimistic about the future of education funding in the state.
I always have hope, and I have hope. My personal reason for having hope has to do with my faith and what I believe. I know that's something that keeps many people in our community going. But I also see signs of effort and work that gives me hope. So I know that we have local legislators who I've met with on both sides of the aisle who acknowledge some of the things we're talking about. They understand, first of all, just kind of working backwards, they understand why the language that's being used by some folks is so damaging and unproductive and just needs to stop. But they also just very practically realize, and they've seen enough of the data to understand that we have a strong formula. Our formula needs to be updated, and we need to use the formula. And they also are acknowledging that we need to invest in public education. And you see in both the House and the Senate an awareness of that. And while I would say it's not yet adequate, I'm grateful for the steps in the right direction. And that gives me hope.
The impact that funding disparities have on students in underserved communities perpetuates a cycle of disadvantage and limited opportunities for success. It is clear that addressing this issue requires not only a commitment to equitable funding allocation, but also a larger conversation about systematic inequities and the underlying factors that contribute to educational disparities. By advocating for fair and equitable education funding policies, engaging in community dialogue, and supporting initiatives that prioritize the needs for marginalized students, we can work towards a more just and inclusive education system in Oklahoma. It is our collective responsibility to remain vigilant in order to ensure that every child, regardless of their zip code, has access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I'm Anthony Cherry in Tulsa.
Since the Dakota Access Pipeline protests that began in 2016, pipeline projects have come under wider scrutiny from the public. Now another marginalized community, in this case in Texas, faces down a natural gas giant in an effort to protect their land. Nick Alexandrov has the story.
Eminent domain for private gain, that's the hook. Eminent domain for private gain, that's what it all boils down to.
The name
One Oak
carries certain associations in Oklahoma. You might think of a ballpark.
Baseball is officially back. Tonight is the opening night of the Tulsa Drillers season.
News on 6 is live at One Oak Field with what's new this year.
You might think of public service.
I'm not sure there's a week that goes by without One Oak doing something for the community.
We work with United Way. We do a day of caring where we go out and we help an organization in need.
You might even think of protecting nature.
Without the environment and without maintaining everything that we have around us, all the gas processed in the world isn't going to get us anywhere. And One Oak understands that.
But 700 miles from the company's Tulsa headquarters, in far west Texas, in the remote Chihuahuan Desert, people take another view.
Essentially organized crime. It's what this amounts to.
Coyne Gibson lives in Fort Davis, Texas.
I am a research engineer and scientist. I spend a considerable amount of my free time in support of environmental issues in the region, in the greater Big Bend region.
I called Coyne in mid-March to talk about One Oak's Saguaro Connector Pipeline. Announced last December and due for a final investment decision this summer, the pipeline will start at the Waha Hub, a major natural gas site in the Permian Basin. It will then stretch 150 miles to the southwest, terminating at the Mexican border in Hudspeth County.
If you take a place like Hudspeth County, they're very poor, underrepresented. They're just abused and rolled over by mining operations and extraction operations of all kinds.
In the 90s, Maine and Vermont wanted to send their nuclear waste there. Locals defeated the scheme. Merco Joint Venture, a Long Island firm, dumped New York sewage there for 20 years.
And it's treated as essentially a wasteland, and the people have no voice. They simply don't matter. That is egregious from any social justice perspective.
It was a Saturday evening in early April. I was cashing out at Luna's, a Mexican restaurant off Interstate 10 in Van Horn. The owner asked if I was there to see friends. I told him I was visiting Sierra Blanca, 30 miles away. His eyes widened, startled, skeptical. Only 700 people, most of them Hispanic, live in Sierra Blanca, the Hudspeth County seat. The Quitman and Eagle Mountains surround this lonely town 90 minutes southeast of El Paso.
We're a real disenfranchised community. The people in my community don't even yet know this pipeline's even happening.
Bill Guerra Addington's family began working the land there a century ago. His grandfather arrived from Mérida on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula in 1915.
I'm third generation rancher and farmer here. And my grandfather started this farm and ranch. He worked real hard, put his sweat and blood in this land. I've lived here most of my life. I'm 64 years old, 65 actually now. You get connected to the land, like on this ranch and farm.
In early April, Bill and I spent a long Sunday, from midday till nightfall, touring the road south of Sierra Blanca. This is where Sierra Blancans live, work, and escape the stresses of daily life. It's desolate seeming at first, but really one of the world's biologically richest deserts. This is the land One Oak's planned pipeline will traverse.
You got all this property fenced in.
Bill's friend Quito Arnold drove. He steered his Jeep Wrangler 20 miles an hour over the stony ground, guiding it through arroyos, using his scanner to listen in on the Border Patrol and, at one point, he believed, a drug cartel. We crept along the Rio Grande. We stopped to photograph rock formations Bill likened, in their power to overwhelm, to the Sistine Chapel. We passed pictographs painted on boulders by dead civilizations.
It goes without saying that they are going to destroy archaeological features and artifacts.
That's David Keller.
I'm an archaeologist, a historian, and I do historic preservation work.
Like buying the historic Hotel Ritchie in Alpine, Texas to save it from demolition. We talked there in its bar room dating from 1908 about the Saguaro Connector Pipeline. David explained that if the project goes up, it's archaeology's loss.
You're looking at 10 to 11,000 years of time depth. Hunter-gatherer groups whose names have been lost to time. And then later on, by early historic times, the tribes that were there were the Apaches, in later times, Comanches. There's hardly anywhere that you can go that you're not going to find something.
Off-roading the next day, I shared the cramped back seat with Lori Simmons. She's a community organizer with the Property Rights and Pipeline Center. I asked if she considers West Texas a sacrifice zone, a place marginalized groups call home, but energy firms deem expendable and pollute accordingly. She said it's heading there. Bill agrees, calling One Oaks Pipeline
this newest outrage on our home that threatens, our water, our air, and our way of life.
But his concerns range beyond the methane pipeline's leak, their array of impacts on biodiverse regions.
This isn't just some environmentalist issue. Like I said, they're using eminent domain.
That's when a government takes private property for public use, appropriating, in this case, ranch land to move natural gas. Eminent domain is what the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority exercised late last century, taking nearly a quarter of the properties in Deep Deuce, a historically black neighborhood, from 1997 to 2000. It's what the Tulsa Development Authority used to seize Greenwood District homes when city planners charted a highway through that community and when Oklahoma State University expanded there.
In that case, even though that was egregious, that it was ostensibly for the public good, whereas this is not even for that.
David Keller, the archaeologist, and I were wrapping our interview in Alpine's Hotel Ritchie. He named a core injustice in One Oaks Pipeline plan.
Eminent domain for private gain, that's what it all boils down to.
Next month, I'll look at One Oaks' campaign to win approval for the Saguaro Connector and at the opposition gathering in West Texas and beyond. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I'm Nick Alexandrov in Sierra Blanca.
In our March episode, Focus Black Oklahoma covered efforts to reform the Oklahoma County Jail. And since that broadcast, a grand jury released a report detailing conditions at the controversial facility. Shonda Little has the update.
In March, we sat down with members of the People's Council for Justice Reform, a group of Oklahoma activists dedicated to transforming the Oklahoma County Jail into a safe and humane facility. We caught up with those three members, Sean Cummings, Sharice Baker, and Nanette Cummings, no relation, for an update as the Oklahoma County Jail Trust is an ever-evolving situation. The group says that they are pleased so far with the job performance of the new Jail Trust CEO, Brandy Gardner. Gardner has been serving as interim CEO since December, after Greg Williams resigned following public outcry over health concerns, a bedbug infestation, and multiple inmate deaths. While the group acknowledges needed improvements have been made under Gardner's watch, they also say the situation remains dire. They point to a harrowing grand jury report made public last month that detailed the 37 inmate deaths since the jail trust was established in 2020. The grand jury found, quote, a predominance of opioids, end quote, in the jail, and noted that poor background checks had led to the jail hiring active gang members as detention officers, who later brought drugs into the jail for inmates. For those, and many other reasons, the People's Council for Justice Reform continues to advocate for the Oklahoma County Jail Trust to be dissolved. However, the activists know that the dissolution is improbable, especially since Oklahoma County voters approved a $260 million bond last year to build a new jail. The group plans to be watchdogs to ensure that the taxpayer dollars truly go to a humane and efficient jail and not a slush fund for private companies. Nanette Cummings became involved with the People's Council for Justice Reform after her son was incarcerated in the Oklahoma County Jail. She says her son, who battles both physical and mental health challenges, does not receive adequate health care in the jail.
They're still in the planning stages of where they're going to make the decision to place the jail. So this is just still stuff on paper, nothing of what we are going to see, what our dollars are going to be like. I would like to see the plans. Give me more detail than just telling me spaces of where you want to build the acreage and the facility far as what are you looking for. We as the people out here need to know that. What is access going to be like? Is it going to be on a main stretch? Is it a stretch where it is divided 4 lanes. How safe is it? How unsafe it will be? What kind of materials are we putting in? I'm just a little unsure if it's going to be a 3-story, 4-story. Is there a storm shelter going to be there for protection? Because right now, we just threw up a building. We didn't put a lot of effort into it. Who's building the building? I would like to know.
Sean Cummings echoed Nanette Cummings' concerns about the unclear plans being given by the jail trust on the new facility's future site. He also says the new facility should not criminalize mental health.
This past week, I was in a meeting with a lady that was an attorney down there, and she had told me that they're looking at 3 sites for 3 different, jails. So you'd have the jail with the mental health and some other deal. And I'm not sure she knew, but what we would like to see is if you build the jail, we would like the mental health facility somewhere else.
Oklahoma mother and activist Sharice Baker says disproportionate jailing is not the only way that Black Americans battle systemic racism through our justice system. She noted that the locations of these jails have been used to destroy Black communities and wealth.
In those houses over there, where you're talking about that area that used to be a predominantly Black wealthy area. You have Wildwood Estates, Musgrave, you have Park Estates. And when you're talking about those surrounding areas, it's going to depreciate the value of what was once generational legacy Black wealth. And it's a form of gentrification.
The People's Council for Justice Reform are happy to see small positive changes during Gardner's short tenure. But they maintain that there remains a mountain of work. They plan to continue to attend every Oklahoma County Commissioners meeting during what will be a years-long building process for the new jail. And they won't stop until the jail trust is dissolved. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Shonda Little in Oklahoma City.
You're listening to Focus Black Oklahoma. A proposed bill aimed at prohibiting discrimination based on natural hair or hairstyles failed to pass in the current 2023 House session. Dawn Carter speaks to Representative Monroe Nichols, who introduced the bill, and Dr. Tamika Rogers, a professor and filmmaker advocating for the bill's passage.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Louis Gohmert, I inform the House that Mr. Gohmert will vote nay on H.R. 211-16, the bad hair bill.
H.R. 211-16, known as the Crown Act of 2022, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair, was passed by Congress despite its tumultuous beginning. The resolution prohibits discrimination based on a person's hair texture or hairstyle if that style or texture is commonly associated with a particular race or national origin. Upon its passage in March of 2022, about 20 states and 30 cities have enacted their version of the resolution in local laws and statutes. Oklahoma introduced House Bill 2048 this year, and it reads in part, quote, "The dress code shall prohibit race discrimination based on natural hair or hairstyles. The dress code shall not discriminate against a student's hair color, hair length, or any other hairstyle related to the cultural, ethnic, or religious identity of a student," unquote. Introduced by Representative of the 72nd District, Monroe Nichols, Democrat, unfortunately, the bill did not pass the current 2023 House session. Here's Oklahoma House Representative Monroe Nichols.
Part of the deal is you can't take no for an answer. What can I do to help him understand why prohibiting discrimination as it relates to hairstyles is important? How can I connect with him to help him understand that? As opposed to expecting him to understand it on day one. So I can take that as, oh, he is racist or something like that. Or I can say, hey, I get why he doesn't understand it. Let me go figure out ways in which I can make a connection for him so that he can be someone who can talk about why discrimination is bad across the board.
Exactly how is it that certain ethnicities may be viewed as inexperienced or undeserving of a position, or considered unkept, hostile, or a threat simply by the way they grow their hair? Dr. Tamika Rogers, professor, author, award-winning columnist, and filmmaker of the award-winning documentary Crown, is on a mission through the telling of others' stories.
My main goal is I want to get that bill passed here in Oklahoma. I put out a new documentary that's titled Passing the Crown. And it's short, it's 30 minutes. And then at the front of it, it has news clippings from what actually happened here in Oklahoma. So you got your news clipping of your Deborah Brown schools that kicked out the girl for wearing locks. And then you have the Muslim American who, she didn't get hired at Abercrombie & Fitch at Woodland Hills Mall because of her hijab, right? The news clipping of the Native American who got his hair cut off at school. Okay. And then I have the news clipping of a college recruiter who I believe went to Del City to recruit some kids and at a high school, who lined them up according to their skin tone, skin color, and whether their hair was straight or nappy.
This is not just an American issue. This is, in fact, global. Chloe Carter, a poet, spoken word artist, and creator of Underground, a spoken word event venue based out of London, UK, explains what she has witnessed regarding hair discrimination in the UK.
Like, literally, I think end of last year, it was a little girl. She went into school and she had the Drake certified lover braid heart thing. Yeah. They called it like an inappropriate hairstyle. I think she was like secluded for the whole day from the rest of her classmates, and they made it seem like it's such a big crime and stuff like that. So like, these things are definitely happening. A lot of the things that happen in America do happen in the UK. I really want there to be this, like, I don't know, this collective responsibility to take action. And I want that to happen like outside of the victim's family or stuff like that. I just want it to be like, it happened to her, that means it could happen to me, or it happened to her, already feels like it happened to me. So let's do something about it.
Speaking up is part of the battle. The more voices, the more this matter is heard. And the more it is heard, the better chance given at pushing this matter to the forefront of those who have the power to create effective change. Dr. Tamika Rogers remembers experiencing hair discrimination as early as 2nd grade through using her writing of children's books and now animation. She is empowering the youngest of minds.
I'm also working on a cartoon, and it's called Amika and Her Magical Hair. And she's been doing gymnastics and practicing and all that kind of stuff all through the summer to get ready for the big cheerleading tryouts when school starts. And she goes, and wherever she goes, she flips her hair and sparkles and butterflies comes out, and everybody just loves her, right? She goes, she tries out, and the coach comes and tells her, "You did an amazing job, Amika. Your back flips, your high flips, all that, wonderful. But you can't be on the team unless you change your hair."
Although Rogers' animation is still a work in progress, it registers with so many who struggle with the acceptability of their natural hair, young and old alike, whether in the workplace or institutions of education. Here's spoken word artist Chloe Carter with a poem for this main attraction.
Our hair is a love language. It's never too much. See, doing our hair is acts of self-love. You can look, but like Solange said, don't touch. The strands, the roots are the sacred parts of us that run deeper than a comb. History says cane rolls is how we found our way home. It's time to let it be known. My hair is not only the crown, but it's the whole throne. It's royalty. And if you copy my hairstyle, I'ma need some royalties.
This is just the beginning of the quest for hair equality, which means the journey is far from over. So there is time to start the discussion regarding hair discrimination with sons, daughters, co-workers, and friends. The time is now to reach out to the state legislature. Here is Representative Nichols on the power of the people to initiate change.
I think the future of the state is in the hands of people across the state far more than it is in the hands of people who are just serving in office for, a maximum of 12 years. This is really a conversation about how we're going to live together across the board. When that building with the dome on top of it in Oklahoma City won't get it done, people can and people will. And I think we have to keep that energy up, because if we don't, reverting back to who we used to be is easy.
Although House Bill 2048 did not pass this session, as current chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus, Representative Nichols plans to revive the bill in future sessions. If you'd like to share your thoughts on House Bill 2048, you can email him at monroe.nichols@okhouse.gov and visit okhouse.gov for more information and updates. You can contact Dr. Tamika Rogers regarding her books and films by visiting inspirepublishingllc.com, and her films are available on Amazon. Chloe Carter and Underground Spoken Word Venue can be found on all social media platforms at Chloe Carter. That's Chloe, CHLOE, Carter, CARTERR. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I'm Don Carter in Okmulgee.
The 2023 Tulsa Jazz Fest, produced by Taylor Entertainment Group, is happening on June 2nd at Guthrie Green from 6 to 10 p.m. John Taylor, owner of Taylor Entertainment Group, is an artist manager, booking agent, digital media entrepreneur, and impresario with a passion for spreading awareness of Tulsa, Oklahoma's abiding relationship with jazz music.
The people that are coming are pretty excited because they're all national recording artists. We're opening at 6 p.m. with Dr. Mike Cameron, who is a well-known local artist here, but he is also the professor of jazz studies at Northeastern State University. Speaking of them, we're bringing the Northeastern State University Jazz Ensemble with him, and they're going to be opening the show. And Cynthia Simmons, who is one of our clients under management, is going to be their guest vocalist. So that's going to be the opening act. After that, Paula Atherton, who is a national, international, and Billboard charting artist, is going to be here. She's a female saxophonist, flautist, and vocalist. She is absolutely fabulous. Her current song, her current single, is number 8 on Billboard right now. So she will be here. And then to close it out, we have Adam Hawley, who's a guitarist. He is also a Billboard charting artist. I think his song is at number 13 on Billboard right now. It's going to be a fabulous night of music. These are incredible artists. And it's kind of rare for us to be able to bring this caliber of people here to Tulsa, free to the public.
This state has a vibrant jazz scene, but nationwide, its popularity has waned over the last few decades. Here's Taylor again.
So jazz at one time was the music in this country, and it should have been because it was created here. It came out of blues. And for a while, jazz owned the airways. Back in the 70s and the 80s, even into the early 90s, you could find jazz stations all over the place and people playing all of these great musicians, George Howard and all of these wonderful people. And then there was a change in the radio area. And radio for jazz is a huge, huge platform. And it still is. So right now, we kind of lost our way in the U.S. In Europe, Jazz is hot still. It's hotter there than it is here, which is really ironic because it started here. But they have taken over jazz. That's one of the reasons why we can book internationally just as easily as we can here, because in Europe and places like that, they are just eating it up.
The beginning of June will be filled with live jazz, but not only in Tulsa. The 32nd Charlie Christian International Music Festival, produced and presented by the Black Liberated Arts Center, Incorporated, will occur in Oklahoma City June 1st through the 3rd on the Oklahoma City Community College campus. Tickets and additional information can be found at www.tickets.occc.edu or www.charliechristian.org.
There are a number of women rappers topping Billboard charts in 2023, winning Grammy Awards and dominating popular culture. But artists like Ice Spice wouldn't be able to blow up overnight without a strong foundation laid by pioneers over the preceding decades. Here's Savay with more.
Before all the youngins was calling Nicki the queen, and the industry newbies was sipping Henny and Lean, there were sisters and brothers on the grind through the struggle, all the real OGs who are hard on the hustle. In this day and age, most kids my age are calling Nicki Minaj the queen of rap. Mainly because she's the most influential female rap artist that they've seen in their lifetimes. Now, don't get me wrong. Nicki has busted down doors and overcome so many things and has made her name known in a plethora of ways. But if you're anything like me, a girl who was raised by some old school fools, you know there were legends and queens that came way before Nicki. Got MC Shot Rock, talking about the illest and the heat on the block. The first woman to ever do it, a true pioneer. Yeah, the queen of the mic was always filling your ear. MC Shaw Rock, known as the first female MC in the game, came onto the scene at the young age of 17 back in the 1970s. People who know her name know that she was a pioneer for female rappers in the industry, earning the name Queen of the Mic. I say, talking about the illest in the heat on the block, because when deciphering the phrase, the block is hot, she was the heat. Queen Sylvia, I don't think they hearing ya. Rapping with Sugar Hill, you're hot, now they feeling ya. She bought the bangers and the hits, now she never miss. Rappers Delight was the catalyst. Upon conducting research, I discovered Sylvia Robinson, the founder and CEO of Sugar Hill Records. She was responsible for the song Rappers Delight, a song that was a catalyst in the game when the world of hip-hop was still unseen. It was a first top 40 hit for rap, and for a rap group at that, the Sugar Hill Gang. When people found out that a woman was behind it all, that was huge. Roxanne Shante was only 15, battling boogies with a flow that was so clean. She made a splash in a time that was rocky, and the rookies riding the way they looked like a jockey. Roxanne Shante is definitely one of the most credited MCs in rap history. She came out the blocks at 14 when she hit the world with Roxanne's Revenge in 1984. After that point, she was an overnight sensation. The next year, 1985, she competed in the MC battle for world supremacy, hoping to be named the best rapper in the world. Get this, she was put on the board against 12 dudes. She was going into battles against grown men. The reason being, the officials wanted to get Roxanne eliminated. Shame. Battle after battle, she was smashing them. The craziest thing about this event in Roxanne's life is that when she had gotten down to the last battle, after scoring 9s and 10s all day, the last judge at the last battle gave her a 4, and she lost. He claimed that it wasn't because Roxanne didn't win, but they couldn't allow it at the time. His reasoning being that hip-hop was just starting to be recognized as a true genre of music, And it wouldn't be taken seriously if the best in the world was a 15-year-old girl.
Talking about all the queens who did it right. Gotta talk about the one MC Light. She said, move out the way when I'm coming through the door. Don't like rejection, don't try to score.
MC Light is another highly credited MC. As she should be, though. She slapped the game with her single Light as a Rock. And from what I can gather after looking at her career, that single was the header for her long list of bangers. I used those certain bars from that single because even within the first minute and 5 seconds of her music video, she'd already let you know who she was, what she's about, and what she came to do.
I would talk about the kings, but that's another segment. Black girl, magic, gotta keep it stepping. This is Survey, talking about those who put it down. These are the queens in the game. You can't touch the crown.
There are plenty of OGs who are men, but being that I'm an aspiring Black female artist myself, I wanted to shed light on the women first. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. These are the queens in the game. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty more. Missy Elliott, the iconic Queen Latifah, Lil' Kim, Lauryn Hill. But I knew if I wanted to tell the story right, I had to start at the origins first. This was Survey reporting straight out of T-Town for Focus, Black Oklahoma.
Mothers, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. Usually, we have to worry about our moms telling an embarrassing story about us, but for Michelle Cullum, the shoe is on the other foot.
When was the last time you had a nice cup or spot of tea? I'm talking about tea in a cute little china teacup that you only pull out for special occasions. And you put in a little sugar cube and stir it with your pinky extended in the air and a silver or gold spoon that you gently tap on the edge before placing it on the saucer underneath. While attending a tea party several years ago, I stared at the swirling tea in my cup for a moment, and it brought back a fond memory of when I went to Disneyland with my mom and dad. I was 5 years old and we had walked around Disneyland, and I remember my mom had gotten a little lightheaded because her blood sugar dropped from not eating breakfast that morning. So we sat down and had a little snack, and where we sat, there was the teacup ride. So I begged and pleaded and even threw a tantrum, saying that I wanted to get on the ride. So my parents finally gave in and said okay, and I was off to the teacup ride. My mom decided to be the hero and get on the ride with me while Dad watched and took pictures. We stood in line, and when it was our turn, I took off running around until I found the most beautiful teacup that had purple designs all over it. And because that was my favorite color, I was in hog heaven. I mean, if I was a cartoon character, I would have had the swirly eyes and the little hearts floating out of my head. So we went and sat down on the ride, and my mom looked at me and said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Of course I do." The ride started going around in the circle, and as we were going around, the ride attendant told us to spin the wheel in the center of our car. Mom and I looked at each other and started to spin the wheel while the car was swinging around in a big circle. I tell you, we spun so hard and fast that it felt like my head was going to pop right off my body and go flying across Disneyland. But while I was having my experience, my mom was having hers. When I looked across the seat from me, I could see she was starting to turn shades of purple, blue, pink, yellow, and green. She turned every color in the rainbow until finally the rainbow exploded. When I say stuff went everywhere, it really went everywhere. Except for on us. Thank goodness. But my mom was so embarrassed because now she had stuff all over the ride, and people are looking at her with concern, of course. But she thought they were looking at her in judgment, and she got mad at me for making her ride the ride. So she snatches me off the ride, and we storm out of the gate and go over to where my dad is, and she kind of shoves me over to him and says, "Here, take your child. You should have got on that ride with her. You know I can't handle stuff like this." Of course, my dad is laughing his butt off, which caused me to laugh hysterically while my mom was standing in a huff. That was a great day. Drinking my tea now, I can't help but laugh out loud thinking of this.
Focus Black Oklahoma is produced in partnership with KOSU Radio, Tulsa Artist Fellowship, and Tri-City Collective. Additional support is provided by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Philanthropies, and the Commemoration Fund. Our theme music is by Moffett Music. Focus Black Oklahoma's executive producers are Quraish Ali Lansana and Bracken Clark. Our associate producers are Smriti Iyengar and Jesse Ulrich. Our production intern is Savay. You can visit us online at kosu.org or tricitycollective.com/Focus Black Oklahoma, and on YouTube at Tri-City Collective. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Focus Black OK. You can hear Focus Black Oklahoma on demand for free at kosu.org, NPR One, NPR.org, or wherever you get your podcast.
KOSU Business Circle memberships are ideal for small businesses looking to support public radio and get a little bit of airtime. To learn how your business can become a member, email development@kosu.org.